Australians call it the Big Dry, the country's worst drought in living memory.
It is the most violent weather seen here in over 20 years.
Wet, unstable air collided with cold temperatures to produce tornado-like winds, coupled with rain, snow, and lightning.
What's wrong with the weather? The question is being pondered and debated in countries all around the world. It seems planet Earth has been turned into a giant rains failed to arrive this year. 50 million acres of farmland have been parched, and the threat of famine is very real. Across much of Africa, it's the worst drought ever. Most of South Africa is dry and sunburnt. Harvests have been slashed by a third, and unless the rains come soon, thousands may starve. But in South America, the problem is rain, measured not by the inch, but by the foot. In Peru and Ecuador, 10-foot rains have transformed deserts into lakes. Hundreds have drowned, hundreds of thousands are homeless, and officials are worried that frustrated flood victims may overthrow the government. America just saw the warmest, wettest winter in 25 years. An endless parade of storms swept across the nation, producing an estimated $2 billion worth of damage. Scores of people have been killed, tens of thousands are still homeless. Is this all a coincidence? Experts think not, and many are now pointing a finger of blame at the Pacific Ocean. For some strange reason, it's been unusually warm, a phenomenon known as El Nino.
El Nino is a name given to the unusual warming of the waters of Peru. It was noticed by the fishermen there many decades ago. And since it occurred mostly nearly Christmas time, they called it El Nino for the Christ child.
There have been 8 El Ninos since 1940, but Dr. Eugene Rasmussen, a research scientist, believes this El Nino is highly unusual.
We have records that go back 100 years, and as near as we can tell, this is probably the most intense event in that time.
This is the Scripps Institution of Oceanography near San Diego, California. Oceanographers and meteorologists here are trying to answer some very troubling questions. Just why did the Pacific turn warm and fickle? Did this El Nino help to produce some of the worst weather of the century? And just what lies ahead? These are some of the questions we'll try to answer all this week as we investigate what's wrong with the weather. Paul Douglas, 11 News. Bad weather. Frequently, it's the top story on the nightly news. And this year, the weather has been making news as never before. Of posh beachfront homes into driftwood. On the 10th of February, the Northeast was paralyzed by a rare blizzard. 60-mile-an-hour winds. $100 million. Spring also spawned an outbreak of killer tornadoes. The suburbs of Houston, Texas were hardest hit. 22 people died, and damage was extensive. Not even Atlanta, Georgia was spared. A freakish spring snowstorm piled up 4 inches of slush on the city, stranding thousands of people. In Utah, a warm spring sun turned a record snow cover into a deadly sea of mud and muck. Hundreds of people had to be evacuated, and flooding headaches linger today. In Colorado, it was a similar story. Too much snow and too much warmth. The Colorado River reached its highest level ever, and once again, thousands had to be moved to safety. What's wrong with the weather? Well, many scientists believe the culprit may be El Nino, a puddle of unusually warm water in the eastern Pacific Ocean, stretching from Peru northward to Alaska. According to the thermometer I'm holding, the temperature of the Pacific off San Diego is some 67 degrees. Now that's 2 degrees warmer than normal. This El Nino, this sudden mysterious warming of the Pacific, may be having a profound effect on our weather. Professor Richard Somerville is a meteorologist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography near San Diego, California. His research suggests that the Pacific Ocean may have played a key role in our weather.
The storm track this year was abnormal, and storms came into California from the west, one after the other, at lower latitudes than we're used to. And it's possible that the altered ocean temperature helped to modify that storm track.
But why would a warm Pacific leave our skies confused and angry? And what triggered this strange warming? Tomorrow we'll take a closer look at this mysterious and deadly weather phenomenon nicknamed El Nino. Paul Douglas, 11 News. For some time now, America's skies have been blemished by storms and scarred by fronts. The weather's been, in a word, forgettable. Chances are the weather drifting over your house today was out over the Pacific some 2 to 4 days ago. Air masses soak up warmth and moisture from the oceans. For the last 7 months, the eastern Pacific has been abnormally warm, sending Mother Nature into a deadly atmospheric temper tantrum. Hardest hit California, where the winter was nothing short of a weather nightmare. Hurricane-force winds carved out mountainous 20-foot seas in the Pacific, turning hundreds of expensive beachfront homes into worthless rubble. Over the inland mountains, it snowed and snowed. As much as 700 inches of snow piled up on the Sierra Nevada. A sudden spring thaw triggered rapid snowmelt and a deadly wave of floods and mudslides. March brought perhaps the greatest weather oddity, tornadoes in downtown Los Angeles. All over the earth, floods, droughts, and violent winds are producing headaches and heartaches. Damage worldwide since just last fall is estimated to be an astounding $7 billion. The culprit may be El Nino, a rapid warming of the eastern Pacific Ocean. The last El Nino was in 1958, but Dr. Richard Somerville of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography near San Diego, California, admits that this El Nino was an unpleasant surprise.
As late as last October, many experts were predicting there was going to be no El Nino this year. In hindsight, we know it was well underway by then.
This one sort of hit us out of the blue.
Dr. Eugene Rasmussen from the National Weather Service believes this mysterious El Nino may be the Achilles heel of Earth's weather.
And now, of course, we know that the atmosphere and the ocean are really all linked together. That linkage is strongest in the tropics.
Late last year, scientists noticed that trade winds blowing in the tropics were dying down. These light winds allowed abnormally warm ocean water to slosh eastward across the Pacific, splashing southward to Peru and as far north as Alaska. And meteorologists speculate that this hot puddle of ocean water may have allowed the jet stream to take a more southerly detour, spawning more numerous and more vicious storms over North America. But what triggered this, the worst El Nino on record? A volcano by the name of El Chicon may hold the answer. Tomorrow, the mystery heats up as we continue our search for what's wrong with the weather. Paul Douglas, 11 News.
Meteorologists and oceanographers have not done a very good job, first, of predicting when an El Nino will start.
Dr. Donald Gilman is a leading forecaster at the National Weather Service headquarters in Washington, D.C.
The people closest to the problem missed the boat entirely on this one. And in fact, I think they missed the last one, too.
The El Nino now gripping the Pacific Ocean was a complete surprise, and many scientists are convinced that this vast puddle of unusually warm ocean water lurking just to our west sent the world's weather into convulsions. But why would a warm Pacific have any impact on our weather?
The ocean influences the atmosphere tremendously all the time. Heat gets exchanged from the air to the sea and vice versa. And so when a large warm temperature anomaly exists on the surface of the ocean for a long time, it alters the energy being put into the atmosphere. It alters the places where storms form and where they go.
But what triggered this, the worst El Nino on record? March 1982, a monstrous volcano named El Chicon erupts in Mexico, spewing millions of tons of dust and ash into the upper atmosphere. Some scientists theorize that this cloud of dirt, some 10 to 20 miles above the ground, may have screened out sunshine reaching the tropics. This in turn caused the trade winds blowing near the equator to weaken. A lack of wind prevented cold, nutrient-rich water from rising to the surface of the Pacific. The ocean warmed rapidly, and this El Nino became a storm machine, spawning torrential rains just downwind over North and South America. This is only a theory, and many experts remain skeptical.
El Chicon might have had something to do with it, but in fact we've had many El Ninos before there was El Chicon.
I would have to say that pending any research findings, one could pretty well dismiss El Chichon as a factor.
The trigger of El Nino remains a mystery. Tiny fluctuations in the sun's energy or a slight wobble in the Earth's spin may have led to this strange warming of the Pacific. El Nino has left the skies over North America angry and confused for the last 8 months. And this sudden warming of the Pacific has also taken its toll on the fishing industry here in Southern California. Tiny lobster-like red crabs normally found in the waters off Mexico have been washing up on the beaches in California. Herbert Fry is with the Fish and Game Department in Southern California. He thinks El Nino may have chased many fish away.
So in California, at least, the squid fishery this year was very, very poor. The fishery, however, opened up in Oregon and Washington, which is a very unusual situation.
El Nino continues today. In fact, there are some signs it may be strengthening. How is it affecting our weather? And what lies ahead? Tomorrow, a concluding look at what's wrong with the weather. Paul Douglas, 11 News. Spring came reluctantly this year. It was truly the endless winter of '83. For many towns, the biggest snowfall came in April, snarling traffic and closing a number of schools and businesses. July brought flooding rains and severe thunderstorms. Deadly 140-mile-an-hour winds ripped into the Twin Cities' northern suburbs, leaving behind a trail of broken homes, injured bodies, and a damaged price tag approaching $30 million. Worldwide, this past year has been nothing short of a weather nightmare. Freakish weather has claimed thousands of lives and triggered an estimated $7 billion worth of damage. Many scientists are blaming this rash of bad weather on El Nino, a strange warming of the eastern Pacific Ocean, which began showing up during May of last year. This El Nino has been the strongest ever recorded, with ocean water temperatures as much as 12 degrees warmer than usual. The redistribution of ocean temperature has shifted the storm track southward, sparking more numerous and more intense storms over North America. Has El Nino eased?
Some, although not as fast as we would have thought. And the warm water still exists close to South America. In fact, compared to normal, it's probably at its peak now.
Dr. Richard Somerville explains that odd things are still happening in the Pacific Ocean.
And in general, the event is well past its peak, although in parts of the ocean, a cooling occurred which has now reversed itself, and we're seeing a warming again. Still more proof that we don't really fully understand this very complicated phenomenon.
Dr. Eugene Rasmussen points out that in the 20th century, there have never been two El Ninos in a row.
And if we really have a full-blown El Nino this year, then it will really be more or less two of these events in consecutive years, and this would be a very, very unusual, if not an unheard of situation.
The trigger of El Nino remains a mystery, but many countries ravaged by its side effects are now joining together to research this poorly understood quirk of nature. And scientists warn that understanding doesn't necessarily mean we can prevent the next El Nino.
The amount of energy associated with these events so overwhelms anything we can do in the way of modification right now that it would be very hard to visualize being able to do anything about it. The main thing we can do about it is to anticipate it or know about it so that the countries that are most likely to be involved can make economic plans.
El Nino may disturb our weather for some time to come, but Dr. Richard Somerville believes the forecast for the upcoming winter is still very much up in the air.
Long-range forecasting is terribly difficult. We're only just beginning to learn what is predictable and what will always be random. And good forecasts tend to be expressed in rather hesitant terms. You ought to distrust someone who's sure what next winter is going to be like. He's almost surely wrong.
The long-range forecast is still very much clouded with uncertainty, and yet one thing is becoming all too clear. Unusually warm ocean water in the eastern Pacific Ocean has produced some of the most bizarre weather of the 20th century, and yet the trigger of this destructive El Nino is still a mystery. El Nino continues to affect our weather today, and yet despite all the science, all the technology and computers, we are still very much at the mercy of Mother Nature. And I'm afraid for at least the time being, the only predictable thing about the weather is that it will remain unpredictable. With photographer Bob Timm in San Diego, California, I'm Paul Douglas, 11 News.